Hi, everybody. Joe Chaffee back from a bit of a vacation. Going to get things back on a regular live stream basis here as we go back to our at least one live stream a day. And it looks like with what's on the weather maps tonight, it may very well wind up being two live streams a day starting tomorrow or Monday, with depending on what happens in the Gulf of Mexico. But let's go through. Want to go through a couple of things uh, with regards to the next couple of days of what we're going to be doing. Uh, First off, of course, tonight we're going to be talking about potential tropical cyclone 14. New advisories are being issued by the National Hurricane Center, and we're going to go over that. We're going to look at tropical storm Leslie, if only because of the fact that it's just doing weird things out in the Atlantic, and it's still going to be around for another 5 or 6 days at least. And we're going to talk about Hurricane Sergio in the Pacific, which is about to make another sharp right turn and head toward the Baja Peninsula, much like Rosa did, although this one's going to be a little bit further south and may come in a bit stronger and also bring in rains eventually into the southwest part of the United States. So we're going to go through all of that. The one thing I want to say right off the bat, right on top, is to remind everyone, or in case you don't know, I want to tell you about Monday, October the 8th, and on our regular live stream, we will have Dr. Judah Cohen. And you can, by the way, if you want to read more about Dr. Cohen, I'm going to put the link up to his website, and you can read all about who he is, what he does, and where his expertise lies, which is in so many areas. But he has a particular following among snow lovers. Has been looking at the concept of snow cover growth in Siberia during the month of October and what that may tell us about the upcoming winter. There have been a number of years where, when the rate of snow, I'm going to simplify it. Uh, it's a little more complex than this, but basically, the faster the snow cover rate is uh, in the month of October in Siberia, is linked to snowier and colder winters in the Northeast. And the problem is, oh, just when that theory got popular, the indicator stopped working, which is typical. But we're going to talk to him about all of that. He'll probably give us some ideas of what he thinks about the upcoming winter. And since we are now into the month of October, if only by about a week or so, maybe a little bit of a clue as to where the whole snow cover indicator is going. So do join us. That's Monday at 7 o'clock. You'll put questions up on the chat board, and I'll relay them to Dr. Judah Cohen, and I'm sure he'll be able to address them and answer them. So it'll be a lot of fun. My colleague Joe Rayo will be there with us as well. So let me get that link up there for you. And in the meantime, just going to get the weather maps ready for tonight here. So I'm going to put the link up on the chat board to Dr. Cohen's website, and you can have it there. It's judahcohen.org, JUDAHCOHEN. Thanks, by the way, for those of you, Stephen Franco, good afternoon, David Allen, Sebastian P., Weather Lover, Tyler Knepp, Jimmy Hayden, great vacation, and Veronica Reese. Yes, great vacation, by the way. I had a wonderful time. I was in D.C. I went to Gettysburg, which, if you've never done Gettysburg, you have to do it at least once. It's just amazing, and I can't even really describe it. Okay, it's just an experience. And then from there, also went to Appomattox, to Richmond. Visited the Confederate White House, visited the Appomattox Courthouse where the Civil War came to an end, and then last stop today was Philadelphia and Independence Hall and the Liberty Bell. So did an awful lot during this last week. So we really did have a great time. And again, definitely put Gettysburg on your to-do list. Okay, so let's start off with potential tropical cyclone 14. which we have been keeping keeping some attention on this in the last several days. Even though I didn't live stream every day, it's the first time that I think I've taken off more than a day and more than one day uh, without doing a live stream. Taking a couple of days consecutively, really needed the break. But we are seeing the disturbed weather that has been increasing and getting better organized in the Northwest Caribbean. It's starting to take that look at that look. If you watch the loop from when it starts to when it finishes, look at the clouds that are up toward South Florida there. You start to see the cirrus outflow from what is a developing broad circulation. And this is why it's not a tropical depression yet, is because the circulation is broad. There is a low center here. You can actually see some of the lower clouds turning in a counterclockwise fashion near some of the heavier convection, but the center's kind of elongated north-south, and we're going to have to wait for it to tighten up. But looking at the satellite presentation from today, definitely has gotten better organized, and we are definitely seeing signs of those upper level winds relaxing, and I think that is really the most important thing as far as where this is going to go development wise. I want to go to the hurricane model forecast tracks of this because these models have done very well with respect to tropical systems this year. And of course, I want to emphasize, if you're watching you're looking at these maps, do not use this map to make any kind of decisions. Any maps that you see on my live streams or on other live streams, you should not use those maps to make any kind of decisions. But instead, you want to go to your local National Weather Service office at weather.gov, or you can go to the National Hurricane Center at nhc.noaa.gov. We do have the tracking models taking this to the Florida Panhandle. The westernmost outlier is to about Biloxi Gulfport, the easternmost outlier perhaps to Pensacola or a little bit further to the east from there. And then it looks like this may wind up going up the east side of the Appalachians, and that's going to be very important because that may mean for heavy rains moving through Georgia, and particularly for inland South and North Carolina and up into much of Virginia, and then eventually up into eastern Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York City, southern New England, and southeastern New York State. So we're going to have to pay attention to this up along the East Coast for the obvious reasons for the Carolinas because of heavy rains after what they went through with Florence. The good news is, and this is good news, the good news is that anything that comes out is going to be moving along. This is not going to be a situation where we're going to see a system come to a grinding halt for any length of time. This is going to move along, move inland, probably sometime let's say Wednesday, 96 hours from now, for a landfall, and then from there moving northeastward, and it just keeps on going. There's nothing in the upper air that even remotely suggests that this is going to stall out. Here's the GFS ensembles on this, and you have same idea here. If you take the mean track of all the different members, it's it looks like about half the members are to the left, half the members are to the right. So, and the spread actually stays pretty tight, fairly tight, relatively speaking, as it moves up the East Coast. So this could eventually bring heavy rains up into the Mid-Atlantic and into at least southern areas of the Northeast, maybe even going a little bit further north than that. But the other thing is the fact that while conditions are going to be conducive for some development, it does not appear to me like this is going to be one of those rapid strengthening type deals. At least that's the plan at the moment. Now, bear in mind that we could certainly wind up seeing models decide that, well, maybe things might be a little different. But why don't we take a look at what the outflow looks like in the upper atmosphere going forward. And put up the wind shear. I have to use the other region here so we can get the wind shear map up. This probably will work. And starting at the beginning, please. There we go. So what we're looking at here is the wind shear between, say, 5,000 feet and about 30,000 feet. And where you see the orange, of course, you're talking about very strong upper air winds across much of the southern Gulf of Mexico, across Cuba, and across Florida. But as we go through time, moving through Sunday and into Monday, that area of strong winds shrinks and you start to get low pressure. Now, this is again not the most ideal conditions here as far as strengthening is concerned. You still have, some strong, some wind shear going forward, but somehow the GFS at least wants to develop this, actually taking it to a hurricane strength. I don't know if it's going to be able to do that. I'm wondering, just judging from this whole upper air pattern, again, to me, it doesn't look like the most ideal pattern for strengthening. So I'm kind of thinking that the GFS might be a little bit overdone with this. We can take a look at the Europeans' view. Not that the European is Bible here. The European actually also has a fairly wrapped up low. I'd like to see how deep it has it. All the models, by the way, have see, the European doesn't really deepen it that much. I mean, it gets it to about a 992 pressure. I mean, this really would suggest a strong tropical storm coming in rather than a hurricane. But again, I don't, looking at the GFS and looking at the upper air wind conditions, I don't think they're the most ideal for strengthening, but some strengthening, I think, does take place. The more important factor, by the way, going forward is the fact that this is eventually going to play a role in adjusting the weather pattern across North America. We've been waiting for something to get rid of the ridge in the eastern United States, and this may be the system that does it. And it's on the European by Friday. It actually has a flatter route, a flatter look to it, where it has the low going into southeast Georgia and then off the North Carolina coast and northeastward. Whereas we'll look at it on a better shot here, so we can look at the full northeast. So here's the European, and it kind of shoots it out to the northeast, uh, keeping it the flow a little bit flatter than what the GFS has. The GFS wants to bring it up further north and west overall. If we can bring it back, let's go. Okay, this is the new GFS. That's why I got to go ahead one run. We're running it, we're doing this live stream at the time that the new GFS is coming in. And here's your system as it comes out of the Caribbean and on up into the Gulf of Mexico, near Mobile or right on the Florida Panhandle for a landfall. Guessing that it's overdone. The Hurricane Center is leaning toward the idea of this being less developed. And it hooks it up with this low that's going to be in the western lakes. So it takes the surface low further west and north than the European does and brings it up just along or just east of the Appalachians. So this is going to be a more serious rainmaker if it's correct. So we have to resolve this, obviously, and we're not going to do that tonight. But there's the rainfall forecast with respect to the next 7 days or so. The rainfall amounts diminish as we go further into time. I would just be cautious because, being that this is a tropical system, you certainly could wind up with rainfall amounts that are 50 to 100% higher than what's being indicated. The other issue with regards to tropical systems is going to be Sergio. And here's the Hurricane Center's forecast map with that. As Sergio is a major hurricane with top winds of 125 miles an hour, and it does much the same thing that Rosa did, where it takes this sharp right turn and then runs northeastward from there, looking like it's going to make landfall a little bit further south as a tropical storm, more than likely. And then this system also will likely see the rains from this going into the southwestern part of the U.S. And here's the forecast map for the rainfall. And you see some heavier rainfall amounts across much of Arizona and into western New Mexico. The actual surface track here, at this point, the low is gone, but there's Sergio coming in over the central part of the Baja Peninsula. So it's, again, a little bit further south than what Rosa did. And then the rains go into southeastern Arizona, into western New Mexico, And then they sort of fall apart after that. Some of that rain gets pushed east. There's a cold front that's in East Texas, and they're sort of separate here. They don't really look like, it really doesn't look like the systems get involved with each other. And then it moves on out to the northeast from there. And Leslie, on the other hand, has just been milling around in the Atlantic for days and days now, and it's going to mill around for days and days. Top winds here, 60 miles an hour, 37.4, 54.5, and movement is to the east at 12. It actually is forecast to turn southeast and get down almost to about 27, 28 degrees north, but going back almost to 30 degrees west. So we're talking pretty far south and pretty far east, going in an easterly direction and not a westerly direction. There have been some swells along the east coast for the last 2 days. There probably will be some wave action continuing into tomorrow, but it may diminish a little bit as Leslie moves out to the east. I want to let me just go back. I'm sorry to be a little bit disjointed here, but let's go back to the tropical cyclone, um, potential tropical cyclone 14. And just to show you the Hurricane Center's forecast here. So here we have, at the moment, we have tropical storm warnings up for parts of the Yucatan Peninsula. You can see the Hurricane Center's forecast track into the Gulf Coast, and we'll get a little tighter. So actually going in east of Pensacola is where the center goes in and then moves on their forecast into southeastern Alabama and into southwestern Georgia. With respect to the wind field, we'll put that on there. Nope, that's, I don't like let's use the earliest arrival time, most likely arrival time of tropical storm force winds. So we're talking Tuesday night, Wednesday, sometime probably Wednesday morning for a landfall, maybe on the Florida Panhandle, perhaps a little bit further west than that. But we'll zero in on the exact spot, or as close as we can get to the exact spot in another day or two. But it does really look like this system's going to at least attain tropical storm strength before it's all said and done. Now we'll look at the longer-term weather pattern across the U.S. We've been talking about the fact that we've got these tropical systems kind of having an impact on the upper air, and it looks like they're going to be changing the pattern a bit across North America as we get that trough perhaps to finally drop into the east. Now, if you watch here on the upper air, let me just make sure you're seeing what you should be seeing, and you are. The map of North America. Maps, by the way, courtesy of tropicaltidbits.com as always. And you can see that tiny little dot in the Gulf of Mexico is going to be the next tropical storm more than likely. It's responding to this deep trough that is running from Montana down into West Texas. And of course, on the southwestern edge of that, we've got Sergio that gets drawn into, is another short wave that drops down into the Pacific West. And it extends from Idaho down to off the California coast. So that really picks up Sergio. And it also, the short wave, the trough that's running from Minnesota down into Arkansas, picks up the tropical system in the Gulf and then shoots it up the east side of the Appalachians. Eventually, with Sergio coming in, you wind up shifting the whole trough position to the east. So you can see how that happens going into next weekend. So this would certainly suggest that the tropical systems are going to be the catalysts to get some of the cool, rather cool autumn air in for next weekend. That seems to be the plan of attack here as far as how the models are seeing it. A temporary suspension of the ridge in the east and the trough in the west. And we say temporary because in the long range on the prior run, you have another trough that's dropping into the west. And while the ridge in the east doesn't really fire up all the way, we do wind up with a little bit of ridging there in the eastern part of the United States for a few days in the second half of the long range period. So it'll change it, but the trough seems to want to go in the west. At least that's been the case now since mid-September. So, and it's also been the case that the models have been trying to shift the pattern to the trough into the east in the long range. This time around, at least we're inside the 10-day time frame, so we could probably feel fairly confident that the models are going to be correct in bringing down a significantly cooler air mass into for next weekend. Uh, let's bring up the surface map. I want to just go over a couple of things that are going on tonight that I think are of importance with respect to the weather. I'm going to bring up the national radar. We do have some severe weather moving across northwestern Indiana, southeastern Michigan. This area has already moved through Chicago, in through south central Illinois, back to just south of St. Louis. So there's a fairly impressive line of storms that runs from the lower lakes down into the southern plains and also into parts of southwestern Texas. We have some flood watches up for parts of the southern plains because of the rain that's been occurring there. And the flood threshold is low considering the rainfall that's occurred going back to last week when Rosa came to town. And in the meantime, we do have some action going on in parts of Louisiana and southeastern Texas with some moisture. And also in the southwest, looking in and around Las Vegas, northwestern Arizona, southeastern Utah, and over into Colorado. With this trough in the west, we are seeing some rain and even some snows in the higher elevations, at least initially in the northern Rockies. And those snow levels are likely to drop somewhat as we move into Sunday night and Monday. Low pressure developing in northeastern Colorado is going to pull down a little bit of colder air into the northern plains and Rockies. So there's a bit of a changeover to snow. There's your system from the Gulf of Mexico running up the east side of the along or just to the east of the Appalachians, while Sergio comes in and that moves into Baja. So again, those two systems really going to be the catalyst for some cooler air next weekend. And the model does show a fairly decent shot of cool air coming in next Saturday night and Sunday, assuming that we don't see things change very much. The surface high is much further south this time around, as opposed to taking a high into southeastern Canada. We're seeing a high going much further south. So I think this is probably going to happen, considering what we're seeing with all the other things going on in the upper air and the tropical systems all getting involved. The atmosphere seems to want to be in a bit of a state of flux as it adjusts to all these changes that are happening. So stuff to look forward to and to look ahead to if you like cooler weather. I really think you're going to get some of it next weekend, and of course we will keep a watchful eye on tropical systems. By the way, in terms of the weather across the Northeast tonight, I just want to bring up the Northeast radar. Then I'm going to come to the chat board in a second. There are some showers and storms in western Pennsylvania and in western New York. They're likely to fall apart during the overnight. We do have warm air that is going to be shifting northward during the day on Sunday. Warm front coming up from the south, and then a cold front coming in from the northwest. That will bring in another high and start the onshore flow business again for next week. So I really would. I'd like to see some fall weather get in here. All right, just really fast for those of you who are interested in what I've been calling a complete weather experience. Certainly, I hope it's a better weather experience. So you can join my Patreon platform, my platform on Patreon. It is subscriber based. It's only a couple of bucks a month, and you'll get all sorts of posts. A lot of posts that I do on Patreon do not show up on my website. So you get stuff that only Patreon members see. And back tomorrow, since I'm back from vacation, we'll have our what I was doing, which was a daily video for Patreon members only, and doing that in the morning. So we'll be doing that again beginning tomorrow. So the link is up on the chat board for those of you who are interested. Just take a look. There are some posts there that are open for everybody to see, and that at least you can sample what's up there. And thank you very much for those of you who have joined and supported my channel. Really appreciate it. All right, let me. Where's my picture? Where did I go? Did I disappear? No, there I am. So don't forget, folks, Monday, 7 o'clock, Dr. Judah Cohen will be on the live stream, and we'll be talking winter weather. And by the way, on Tuesday, the 9th of October, I will be at the Bayport Blue Point Library in Bayport, Blue Point, New York. And we'll be talking probably whatever tropical system is around. We'll be talking about that. And we'll do some winter weather work too, and we'll see where that takes us. I am back, Timothy Veltman. I'm here, so everything's getting back to normal. David Allen, it's been cold in Britain today. Some places didn't reach 50. Wow. Had air frost in the last couple of days. Could take a look to see if there's some warmer weather coming. Well, let's just do that then. I am more than happy to oblige. Hang on one second. Okay, let's bring this up. All right, so we'll bring up the map of Europe and see what's going on here. Bear in mind, David, I haven't been able to give it a solid look, so I'm just kind of doing this off, you know, just off the top of my head. But here we go. So let me widen this out. All right. And by the way, again, tropicaltidbits.com, your go-to source for maps and all sorts of things. So let's see. Well, you do have, well, at least you have this next low later this week going out well to your west. It's kind of an arm of rain that comes through, glancing blow to Ireland and Scotland, but not much else. So let me look at the upper air. My guess is things should get a bit better. Boy, that's pretty blocky. That's a big blocking high that develops over Eastern Europe and into Siberia there. That's a pretty strong upper high. You're all blocked up, and then another high builds up from Spain on up into France and England. So I'm guessing that you should see some warmer temperatures here, and indeed you will going into later this week. So here's that cold. All right, so here's the cold you've been talking about. That's moved on in during Saturday and for Sunday, and we get a little moderation on Monday and Tuesday. But then it really warms up Wednesday, Thursday. Just going to be kind of curious. What are the temperatures here? The actual temperatures. Well, that's not so bad. You're looking at, you're looking at temperatures at noon up, some places up to almost 20 C. So you're talking about temperatures probably in the upper 60s and maybe even a few spots near or over 70. Before you cool off at night down into the 40s and low 50s. So that doesn't look too bad. You are going to definitely warm up from what you have, which is cold. I mean, look at this is for midnight tonight. You're talking about temperatures in the 30s across much of Western England and on up into Scotland and over and Wales and Ireland. So that's pretty chilly for this time of year. And below freezing now in parts of Norway and Sweden as the colder air and the beginnings of the snowfall start for that part of Europe. In fact, we can actually look. Why don't we look at the snowfall? I imagine with the ridge that's building, you're not going to see a whole lot in the 10-day period, and in fact, you really don't. It's mostly confined to Norway and Sweden, and then on up into northern parts of Siberia. We are going to be watching snow cover growth, so maybe this is a good time to take a look at Asia and see what's happening with the snow cover there over the next 10 days. Well, now remember, this is snowfall in inches, so it doesn't necessarily it doesn't necessarily mean that all of this is going to stick to the ground, but I imagine some of this will, and in some places the snowfall amounts are significant. I just want to see when they occur. So you have some in the eastern part of Siberia occurring in the early part of the forecast period, and then in the central and western parts of Siberia later in the forecast period. So we'll ask Dr. Cohen about this because I'm sure he'll be able to explain, what we should be looking for and where should we be looking for it. Is it the eastern flank, the western flank, the southern flank? Which is going to be the more important spot to look at? And by the way, since we're looking at snow cover and snowfall over the next 10 days across the United States, you're looking at some snows in the central and northern Rockies, on up in parts of the northern plains into northern Minnesota and into south central Canada, and even into parts of southeastern Canada, seeing the first snows of the season. So I hope that helps you out there, David. Let me just get rid of that for now. Come back to the chat board. Okay, give me 1 second here, folks. Just gonna roll back. Let's make sure I got kind words. Thank you, Veronica Reese. Really appreciate it. Yeah, okay. Just catching Timothy Veltman catching me as he leaves church. Awesome. You prayed for me and I came. What can I tell you? Will it be a bad storm when it passes over the Caribbean country? Ask Vishay Khan. Thanks for joining us, by the way. Will it affect places such as the East Bank side and other places? Okay, I'm not sure what the East Bank is. If you're talking about the eastern part of the Yucatan Peninsula, we're talking about the. Well, let me just clarify. We were talking here about the Northwest Caribbean. Okay, so if that already eliminates your area, let me know. But I'd be curious, specifically what you mean by the East Bank, because I'm not really sure what that is. But this is going to impact. We've got the Yucatan, parts of the Yucatan Peninsula, the northeastern side under tropical storm warnings, and western Cuba is going to be at risk too. Rain is going to be the big deal here with respect to this system at the moment. And wind is not the issue, but the heavy torrential rains are. Still in the 80s for Mertha Gunter. Eventually, you're going to get that cool shot next weekend, so everybody will be taken care of. And Seth Dominus 77 has got a snow shovel out ready for the first winter's snow. Well, be a little patient. It's not even the middle of October yet. Actually, I wouldn't be surprised if the GFS has it right the way it has it set up. It might mean for the first snow showers in parts of upstate New York in some places, the ultimate cheap thrill. We'll see. Very chilly in Ireland tonight. You're going to see some temperatures down in the under 4 degrees Celsius, which is pretty cold for this time of year. Trent S went through the Gulf storm at the very beginning of this. I know you maybe came on in late, but go when you play it back on the replay. You should you'll see everything that I covered. Anthony Orr, a resident statistician, are the model tracks of Cyclone14 having their tracks based at least somewhat on each model's projected intensity weaker system further west. That's probably what's at play here, Anthony. More than likely, the shallower system on the European is a little bit further west than on the GFS. So yeah, I wonder again whether the GFS is just up to its old tricks with these overdeveloped systems. It's done that a few times this season, and it might be doing it again here. So I'm going to respect. Looking at the upper air, to me, it doesn't look like it's something that's going to blow up into a major hurricane. It's not going to have time. It's going to have to work to get to a minimal hurricane. It may just wind up getting to strong tropical storm status. I think that's certainly doable. And a lot of times with these systems, when the way these kind of systems develop in the northwestern Caribbean, where you've got everything sort of sheared off to one side, those systems, when they develop, they tend to develop rather slowly. So that's the other thing I think that's working against it. If we're talking 96 hours from now to make a landfall, it doesn't really have a whole lot of time to get much beyond, say, moderate to possibly strong tropical storm status. Because by the time it gets there, even though the water temperatures are warm, they are up above 30 Celsius in much of the northern Gulf. Again, I think time sort of works against this. The rain is going to be the bigger deal, and of course for the inland areas in Georgia, but particularly south in North Carolina and on up into Western Virginia, this is going to be one we're going to have to watch carefully with regards to where the rainfall and how much rainfall we're going to wind up with. Timothy says, can't be too long now. My cousin's father shared videos of snow at his house last weekend near Fargo. Yeah, it's cold up in the northern plains, no question, and that's where they're closer to where the mean trough has been, so they're getting into the cold air. And of course, it's been cold the whole month of September, even going back before that, it's been cold across much of Canada, and that continues, and it's led to some early snowfalls and some early sizable snowfalls in a lot of places. All right, folks, we'll call it a night. It's a Saturday night. Thanks for being here. I know uh, I was on a roll for so long where I don't know when was the last time I took a day off, but I had to do it this week, and it was very, very mind clearing. Let's put it that way. So, gonna get back into the groove of things. What we'll do tomorrow is, so tomorrow morning we'll have a live stream for the Patreon members only. And if you are interested in that, you can subscribe to Patreon, my platform on Patreon. I'll put the link up again. So Patreon members, you will get your live stream tomorrow morning just for you. We'll have our YouTube live stream tomorrow night, probably at around, I'll probably do it after football is done and before the night game starts. So let's say 8 o'clock for the nighttime live stream. And Monday, October 8th, 7 o'clock roughly, Dr. Judah Cohen joins us for our live stream to talk about the upcoming winter. Patreon members, by the way, you can get your questions ready and message those questions to me, and I will ask them to Dr. Cohen, and then of course anybody else that joins on the YouTube channel at night, if there's time, we'll try and get to your question. And the rest of it is just check the website posts at meteorologistjoechaffee.com. And my buddy Angry Ben takes care of New York City at nycweathernow.com. Have a great rest of your Saturday, and we'll see you tomorrow. We'll probably be talking all about potential tropical cyclone 14 and the upcoming week ahead.